There were people that were willing to buy works at thousands of dollars. They were very rich, had very high understanding of art. Being a 19-year-old, the people that I had access to, there's nowhere else I would have met those kind of people, because I watch a lot of music videos, a lot, and it's a ridiculous lot. I knew how to draw, and then I was lucky because my mom went to school with a very famous artist, Samovariety.
Who are like maybe mentors or people that you think that have also inspired your work?
Johnny Ive. I love the way that Johnny Ive cares about design.
Design to us, design's it's far beyond just what something looks like. It's the whole thing. It's how it works. It's how it feels.
That's very close to obsession that comes with trying to make something better is about the only way that you can really get to a level where the work that you do is incredibly important. If you're really, really interested in elevating your craft, especially now, you'd be very focused on industrial design is the pinnacle of design. All good things will take time. Not everybody has that time. The client is always right, but it might not be right for you.
If you could go back to give younger Jordan a piece of advice, what will it be?
There'll be a lot.
On today's episode, we are joined by Jordan Belonwu of the famous Belonwus studio. Alright, we'll be diving into his journey and learning quite a lot from him in this episode. It's going to be interesting. Hi Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. My pleasure being here.
Belonwus, very popular. You worked on some of the most admirable brands. I want to know, like, how did you find design and what was your journey like to the point where you found design and then deciding that I wanted to study fine and applied arts in UniBen?
Okay, so that's like back, 10, 15, probably more 20 years. Anyway, I used to be a science student. I thought I was going to be an aeronautic engineer until I realized I was failing all the courses that made me feel like a science student. So I think with my SS2, I switched just because I knew how to draw. And so that was my pathway into doing design. I knew how to draw, and then I was lucky because my mom went to school with a very famous artist, Samovariety. And so she had some kind of context around what art is and what it's like studying art. I didn't know design was a practice per se, but I just knew that art in general was something I was going to do. So I applied, I got into school, I started doing art for about 2 years. I think it's within the period of me entering school and starting my study that I realized that graphic design and every other part of design was actually a thing. And then I was going to major in art history and do design on the side because I didn't really feel like the opportunities that existed for very high level learning was as practical in school, because my school was more or less focused on fine arts more than applied arts. So it was very heavy on painting, sculpture, ceramics, and some part of metal design. But I was very big on graphic design, and it was not as blooming as it probably would be right now. So I felt like I can just practice graphic design on the side and then do art history, because I was very interested in reading history of art criticism, and things like that. So everything eventually led up until this day.
This point.
Yeah.
You said you knew how to draw. So what was it like? Was it that your parents exposed you to loads of drawings or stuff that made you started developing that skill?
Not really. Not like I think maybe just created a condition whereby it was a nice thing to have. I know I went in for a couple of competitions, but it wasn't really a thing. I didn't really even know I could draw for a long while until I think I'm like 7, 8 years old, because I remember my dad is bad at drawing. It was my mom that told me. My mom is better at art and arts inclined things. And so I think I was either 5, 6, I don't know how I remember this, but there was some competition and I was supposed to draw either an elephant or something. My dad helped me draw it. I thought it was good. It was like multiple years later that my mom told me it was bad. And she told me it was bad because she knew I was obviously a better artist, like as at that period. So that understanding, I think that's one experience I can remember. I think there might be another one where there was just some kind of familiarity with art. My mom's a baker, and so she did quite a lot of, like, you know, like when they write happy birthday on cake, like to the calligraphy and like having to write it, and just some kind of stencil art growing up. So I was somewhat familiar with it. And then my mom, I think, was very big on, I think, Shrek. We watched a lot of Shrek. I remember a lot of the, what's called, is it the monologue? Like majority of the conversations. So I think maybe that scenario, that kind of environment was something that really helped. And then my dad was very big on like interior architecture, interior design. He was very big on fashion to a large extent. And I think I even tell like in my childhood pictures, like you could tell that
You were intentional about
yeah,
how you guys
exactly.
showed
Like they
up.
were like it was a thing that they were very focused on. So I think it was that kind of environment that allowed me to have the opportunity to study. I mean, my younger sister studied theater arts.
Yeah.
So my elder sister was going to do something related to I think makeup or fashion. I know it was within that framework, and there was no kind of pushback in the entire house for trying to study that kind of course. It didn't feel like it was weird. There was no kind of push to be a lawyer or
Yeah,
be
be a
like at all. Like it
doctor,
was
some
not
of the
even a thing
popular
at all.
classes.
At all. So it was just I think it was that kind of environment that enabled it.
So you talked about while in school, right? Probably the lecturers, and I think I read somewhere where they wanted you guys to focus a lot on the traditional way of doing art and doing stuff, but then you started learning how to use softwares even while in school. What exactly was going on in your mind then? Was it because you had a lot more exposure, you weren't satisfied with just the basic, or but you wanted to like do much more, maybe the applied arts aspect? So what was it like during
So
that period?
it's not so much because I mean I owe a lot of my career development to actually studying fine and applied arts in University of Benin. I hold a lot of my lecturers in very high regard, especially Kennedy Shubukola, Dr. Kennedy. He was our CAD, computer aided design lecturer, and he was very big on. I mean, computer aided design was not exactly graphic design, which is somewhat tricky because computer aided design was a course that we did in I think 100 level and 200 level, but it wasn't offered in 300 and 400. And so I was very interested in it. I think I got all A's, very easy A's in that because it was pretty much graphic design. But the courses that made you become, like, that gave you the opportunity to major in graphic design were not exactly graphic design. So there was 2D. 2D design was pretty much the course that you had to get A's or maybe B's at for you to be able to be a graphic designer, for you to major in graphic design. And of course, I wasn't as great as those that were very good at painting because typical exams were like a company, let's say Bonvita has just launched a 1,000 grams new pack, design an advertorial to announce this. But now you cannot design with CorelDRAW, Photoshop, or Figma or anything. You have to paint it, and you're submitting an A4 paper or maybe like A3 paper of your painting of Bonvita's logo with all your typography. So I wasn't as skilled at that as much as I was with using my computer. So people that were better at just painting Bonvita
Yeah,
and
we're able
making
to get it done
exactly.
just
So
like that.
it just felt like there was no way I was going to get in. But I had known early on, but then I was even more interested in art history because I felt like it gave me opportunity for me to study the theory of art and design, and that even gave me the leeway into because my very first experience with art outside of school was when I was writing for Daily Times, and my friend was interning at Terra Culture, and I was interning at Samo Variety Studio. So all these multiple experiences through the pathway of art criticism and writing about art gave me a broader opportunity to really see art for what it was. So I think that encapsulates the idea around how graphic design was applied in university and how that translated into my career of recent.
Studying about design, being very interested in history of art, how it influences probably culture and then even products and all of that. Would you say that like formed a major foundation for how you work on projects, even at Belonwus, or how you work on branding?
I mean, I think that it was very, very instrumental, especially because as an art writer, I mean, it's now that you go to art galleries or you go to art exhibitions and you see people below the age of 25. Typically, as of 2015, 2014, it was just me and my friend and maybe two other people that were the youngest people in art galleries. Art galleries felt like you were walking into Merrill Lynch headquarters, old people in their 50s, and then either the curators.
Understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Because like they went there to buy. Or the only other people that we would find that were very young, because I think I was around 19 during that period, were either friends of the artist or people that were writers. So I got into rooms that, as of 19, 18 years, like being a 19-year-old, the people that I had access to, there's nowhere else I would have met those kind of people, because there were people that were willing to buy works at thousands of dollars. They were very rich, had very high understanding of art. And so those kind of spaces gave me maybe some kind of conditioning around how to understand art, how much art is appreciated in the real world, and how to position myself both mentally and skill-wise, so that I'm able to get to the peak of what I consider to be like the art industry. So it was in that understanding that I felt like, actually, if this exists for art, there's probably a chance that it exists for design. And if it doesn't, I'll try and create a scenario where I thrive in graphic design the same way art exists.
Art writing, I think that might be new to a couple of people that might be watching or listening to this episode. What exactly is art writing? And is it also transferable to your work even in core design projects?
I mean, short answer is yes. Art writing is pretty much writing about art. It's almost like the same way people write about movies or people write about music. Is pretty much being an art critic. I attended a lot of exhibitions, wrote about them. Some of them were published in newspapers. That's some of the writings, and some of them were, I think I judged a couple of art exhibitions, and this was me being relatively young, but maybe now it has changed, but there was not that many writers that were really either devoted to writing solely around art or writing from the standpoint of they studied art history in school. It was pretty much, if you studied art history in school, the chances that you were going to be a lecturer or like work in education was higher than you were going to just work out in the field in the art industry. And some of them were usually curators that sometimes they usually write, because a lot of publications like This Day, Guardian had people that were writing about art. But I think it's better now compared to how it was around 2015, which is like 10 years ago. But I think that really shaped the way that I both write about the things that I do and articulate the thoughts that I have around. I mean, because the most fundamental for me is that art is usually very subjective, and as much as it's subjective, it's also very open to a lot of opinions, and it's most times metaphorical. So your ability to translate what you're seeing into words in a way that someone that did not see it understands, or someone that has some kind of does not really have context for how art can be appreciated, the ability to translate whatever it is that exists into simpler terms, or at least terms that show that you have an opinion about it, is a very strong way for you to train your ability to translate thoughts into action, and action into thoughts, and thoughts into words. So it really helped, and that's helped with my writing, because a lot of graphic design from the beginning stage is usually very ambiguous. A lot of the ideas are you trying to translate brand strategy into actual actionable design, and so things like that are difficult in the beginning stage because it's intangible. So that ability to move almost felt like I was reverse engineering, where I saw art and I wrote about it. Now I see writing and I have to transform that into art or into design. Yeah.
Interesting. So now, like, we're getting into like design proper, right? Your journey to founding Belonwus, that's about like 4 years plus ago. You worked at Bamboo for a while. I was watching a documentary recently, I think by PCTME, about Bamboo, right? Their progress. So how do you feel looking at Bamboo today? And then what was your time at like in terms of the work you did for them? I know at some point in time you had mentioned how they offered you even stock options to stay, but then you just said, no, I was going, I was ready. So what was happening? What were you seeing? What did you dream of?
I mean, Bamboo was such a big opportunity because I think that it was very pivotal. I don't think I knew that it was pivotal to where I'm at today, especially because Bamboo was solving a very real problem, and the team at Bamboo were intentional about how they were solving it. So I was happy to be part of that team that was ensuring that Nigerians and currently Africans had access to the stock market and also opportunities to trade um, assets that were more viable. That opportunity made me feel like I was very deeply interested in seeing how a product can move from just being an idea into a tangible product and into something that's beneficial to the users. So playing the role of brand designer and eventually creative director helped me to understand that some of the time the product is good enough. However, communicating the product is usually what separates good from great. And so we had to work very hard on trying to explain, because as at the time Bamboo launched, stock market trading was relatively new to a lot of Nigerians. And so, aside even just explaining that there's an opportunity where you can buy US stocks, there was also the fact that many people didn't even understand what
So you now
stock
need
trading.
to build trust.
Yeah,
and make
exactly.
them-
And so I think Bamboo was the first company that had done any kind of course that explained the stock market in Nigeria. And there was a follow up on that course, giving people more context around what's a bull market, what's a bear market. And we made sure that because I mean, this was like easily data from the customer support. When Bamboo launched, there were a lot of people that were very interested, but there were usually questions around, so how do I trade? What stocks do I buy? And Bamboo was not licensed to like tell you exactly what stocks to buy. So we had to create this, I think, 20-part course that explained what the stock market is, how to invest, how to choose stocks to buy, and everything. So that build up, I was creative director within that period, and I worked on figuring out the scripting, the set design, styling, hiring the director, figuring out post production and everything, just to make sure that this message was clear and it was able to translate from being a concept to handing it over to people that could watch it and instantly know that they're good enough.
to start investing.
Exactly.
So now to leaving Bamboo, right? Deciding that you wanted to like build your own design agency or start a design agency. What was going on in your mind? I know you already had, maybe probably as at that time, you had a lot of experience from art. You had started like working with directors, set design, and a lot of that. Did you feel very confident that you probably thinking about pricing, working with designers, getting your own clients? What was it like deciding to start your own agency?
I mean, there were, or there still are, a lot of advertising and design agencies in Nigeria. I had worked at one, Image and Time, and that was where I worked for about 2 years before I moved to Bamboo. And they handled quite a number of brands. So I was very familiar with both the industry and the work that was available to be done. But part of the reasons why I left Bamboo to start out Belonwus was because I felt like, aside the work being just for one brand, there's only so much you can do, because like this brand is going in this direction, and even if you want to do, say, a very cool jersey now, they don't really have a need for that. And because I'm somewhat of a designer that is not really a self-starter, so it's tough for me to come up with a concept for myself and execute it. So I'd rather find a brand that wants something similar and find a way to steer them in that direction. So because of that, it almost felt like I had done a lot of the cool things that I wanted to do with Bamboo, but I felt like there was still a whole lot more that I could do, and I didn't think it was going to be able to work for just one brand. I felt like there were things like set design, art direction, photography that the company was just not really interested in doing at that point. And I felt like, okay, I probably have to lead a team that would execute all these frontiers that I'm really excited
Multiple
about.
brands.
Yeah, and that's how I started the studio. I mean, I was already freelancing for a long while, but I felt like maybe instead of freelancing, I should just probably hire one person as an assistant, and then hire that person, second person, third person, fourth person, and just kept on.
So it's been 4 years plus. What are like your biggest lessons that you've learned so far in this past 4 years of?
I mean, one of them
building
is
Belonwus?
that the client is always right. but they might not be right for you. The reason I believe this is because I've come to understand that design is really difficult to explain to people that don't get it. And as a result, if they're going to have to pay you money for something they don't really get, it's going to be difficult for you to justify both your actions, the decisions, and the impact of the work that you do. And so it's part of the reasons why we barely ever pitch and we barely ever reach out to clients, because if I'm going to have to reach out to you to explain that this service is important, there's a high chance that you wouldn't understand. And then design requires, especially brand design requires, maybe not especially brand design, but like brand design requires a lot of quote unquote taking care of, because the brand does not exist as, and I think this is something that exists very well with branding at low scale, where many people consider branding to be a one-off thing you do, like a campaign. And then right after you've done your brand identity, it feels like, okay, we're done with that. What do we do next? But it's a thing that you just keep on doing on and on and on. And so if the client doesn't really feel like this is something they want to do for a long term, there's going to be some kind of disconnect between what we offer, because what we offer is going to be the entire strategy, the new brand identity, and then guidelines on how to grow this identity. But if they feel like it is something that's supposed to be handed over to them and like they're done thinking about brand identity, they can focus on other things like business, then they're usually going to be in a bad place. So that's one of the things that I've learned, that they're right because they know what they're doing and they're running their company. However, what we're doing might not just align with what they want. And then another lesson was that all good things will take time, and not everybody has that time. And this is especially important because we've worked on projects that have spanned like 8 months, and it's usually difficult to justify that time, especially when it's with a startup. But if you have your eyes set on like doing very, very good things in terms of like quality of output and also quality of impact, there's a high chance that if you don't put in that kind of work for a long amount of time, you might not really get the kind of results that you're looking for. Yeah. I think those are some of the ones that I remember I've learned.
Those are like really, really valuable insights, or lessons that probably people that are just starting out their own agency can work with, or even just designers, whether freelancing or whether even working in-house. Belonwus has worked on some of the most admirable brands. What's in Lagos, this stores for bamboo. So right. So what's your creative process like?
Our creative process is, it depends on the project, but let's say, for example, it's brand identity. It usually starts out with the initial conversation with the client and trying to figure out if it's as valuable to them as it is to us. And the reason this is because brand identity is not really like an outfit that someone delivers to you and you wear to an event and then that's the end. It's more or less like we're delivering a set of parameters that help you arrive at every other event consistently within a look and feel. And so initial conversations is to help us understand if this client is looking for an outfit or they're looking for a stylist for a long period of time. And so after having these initial conversations, we're sort of clear on exactly where the brand thinks they need to go in terms of business and how they think design can do that for them or assist with that journey. And then we get into like paperwork and just figuring out timelines, budgets, and what potential considerations exist. And then we get into research interviews where we're speaking to the client, asking questions, trying to determine what the current look and feel of the brand is and why they think they will require a change, and sort of try and see if we can justify that change by speaking to both current customers, potential customers, even competitors, and customers of competitors to understand where the brand really is. Because very, very relatable when Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do men say I am?" It's notable because who you think you are might not be exactly what people think you are. And what a large number of people think you are is usually what your brand is. And so if you're going to change your brand, you have to change the way people see you, and that perception is usually where we come in terms of branding. And so if we confirm that, say for example, people think you're a luxury brand, and judging by like interviews and questions, you realize that you're not a luxury brand, you're just expensive. Then if you want to position as a luxury brand as a way to align with your business strategy, they will have to start looking at new ways to tell that story or explain that new positioning to both the current customer base and potential customer base in a way that elevates the entire brand and make sure it aligns with the business strategy. They eventually get into design, and from design we get into finalizing the individual assets and like putting everything together in a way that the brand can launch and also sustain their identity through a number of years, and so on and so forth.
So very like insightful, like interacting with the clients to actually know exactly what they want, where they are at, and then work with them to find out the best way to now communicate what maybe their business strategy, for them to like connect with their clients and customers. I watched one of your videos recently where you said you hope that one day maybe a brand out of maybe Lagos or Nigeria or maybe an agency would win a D&AD, right? So how close are we to getting that?
I feel we're very close. I think we're months away actually. And I don't say mincing words. I've seen so many very important projects that I feel are deserving of not just a D&AD, but like global recognition, because I feel like Nigerian design is moving to a point where it's not really dependent on the aesthetic that is sort of like imposed on us, where you don't really have a voice, you only have the voice that they say you have. And so for a long while we've been playing in the position of, okay, we need something for this category, okay, just find someone within Africa that can win this or that can be representing this. But I don't think we're playing a representation role anymore, and we're playing this is who we are, and we're at the same level at global standards, and we're able and willing to show the work and show the impact that sort of commemorates that new presence. So I think that we're very close. Even if there's no D&AD or not, like I know that there's a lot of global relevance that is coming with Nigerian design, especially in type and graphic design.
Hello, sorry for the break. I know you're enjoying the episode. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please just hit the subscribe button, click the like button, and also leave a comment. Share it to friends and family. It goes a long way to help the channel. You can get right back into the video. In line with like getting globally recognized, right, and then we're doing great and quality work that causes more eyes to like look at us, see what we are doing, and maybe even start to work more with most of the agencies we have now. So when you look at our current quality of work now, design education, you did like fine art, there are some schools that have architecture. Our education still seems as if it's not there, right? And we want to come to the point where we have more superstar designers doing great and quality work. Where is our design education at? Would you be able to meet up? Because like currently now, a lot of people will just like, maybe they did one course in school, they'll decide that, oh, I think I'm interested in design. They'll just watch YouTube videos. Can we get to that very high taste and standard, just trying to learn randomly? What do you think should also be done too?
I don't think that design is as hard as rocket science or as hard as like brain surgery. So I feel like within 4 or 5 years, you should be able to get to a place where I think the fundamental is being able to do what you think. If your thoughts are good enough, then you can execute them. And so I think that what is lacking as of today is the design education that enables people to think and do. Because of that, a lot of people are having to either learn on their own or figure out a kind of system, or learn solely because it's an opportunity for them to make money. And if they go that route, there's usually this opportunity, or we call it an opportunity, they're shortchanging themselves, because there's opportunity to do way more than just doing work for money. But I mean, the economy of Nigeria is a sharp contrast with that kind of dream. But I still believe that design education can, especially when it's government backed, will be a very significant opportunity in scaling both design understanding and design in general. And then if we're able to do this and then garner a lot of people that are already practicing design at a very high level, them like finding some kind of scenario whereby they give back to, I mean, I know that majority of the very big designers that I know globally, they're either assistant lecturers or guest lecturers, or they have a part-time job where they lecture at schools, and of course they don't do it.
Schools and
Yeah, they don't do it
schools.
because of money or because like they need to be paid, but it just feels like this is something I can give back. And if, say, Debbie Millman or someone that works at Pentagram is lecturing at a school, you know that it is the direct knowledge that they're getting from working on global projects that they're imparting into
those that they're teaching.
Yeah, exactly. And those people are seeing direct knowledge that you'll be able to get from global standards. Eventually, it elevates the entire stratosphere of the design thoughts that exist within that school community. And I feel like that will eventually elevate the rest of design across the country.
Having the government like really back, maybe at federal or state levels, like goes a very long way to like improve the entire education. We hope that they would like start taking more action in that direction. We have very strong visuals, maybe from our patterns to our direct to our showcase. When you go to the north, all of their mosaic and like different patterns and all of that, but it just seems scattered and everywhere. Do you think that all of this can really be codified into a like design language that maybe countries around the world can even start to use some of our styles and all of that?
I mean, yeah, I think so, and I know that a couple of people have tried and are currently still trying. I know David Udo had put together a publication where he was highlighting house numbering systems and what that typography looked like. I know Sheyi Olusoya had done quite a number of work as well, documenting a lot of Nigerian design. And I know globally, a number of people have paid attention to Nigerian design and are actively trying to ensure that it is both documented and also translated into new designs. So it doesn't feel like we just exist as an archive and we're just archiving things of past. We're not translating those things into new design totems. So I think that the collective effort of archiving, preserving, and creating a scenario whereby everybody understands that this is good design and this is good indigenous design, I feel that that elevates the entire practice higher, because if everybody can collectively agree that something is good, they want to preserve it, or at least want to rationalize the work around making sure that it exists for a long while. And once that happens, there'll be some kind of wider understanding. I mean, the way a lot of people will easily understand the benefit of music and how music can translate borders, I feel like that same thing can happen with design. Obviously not at the same scale with music, but to the point where a lot of people appreciate, value, and can see a future where design is practiced at a larger scale.
I also love to know what exactly maybe junior level designers, middle level, senior designers can like do in this regard.
You first need to establish the fact that design in the way that it exists is as a service. So design is not like fine art where you do the thing and hope someone likes it. You're usually doing design because it has to be functional. So I cannot really emphasize that people should either pay some kind of attention to things that are rural in their areas, because, I mean, if you're designing for a Nigerian startup, they have no need for, like, whether you consider a particular bench to be fantastic. But one thing that I believe is that if something is ingrained in you long and hard enough, it is able to translate into different forms. An example is when we're working on bamboo, the idea of bamboo being scaffolds and those scaffolds having these crossbars that's usually tied was what inspired the iconography system. Something like that now is very prevalent in Nigeria, but it wasn't from the standpoint of what Nigerian thing can we add to this brand to make it feel Nigerian. It was just a thing that everybody at the studio was very familiar with. So when Joseph came up with the iconography concept, it just felt like everybody aligned with it. So I feel like if your mind is really open to the concept of appreciating Nigerian design for what it is, it would sneak into the work that you do, whether or not you're trying to introduce Nigerian design into the entire aesthetic. And then on the standpoint of what you need to do as a junior designer to just elevate your practice, I feel like to a large extent, design is global and the fundamentals don't really change. If you practice it here in Nigeria, you can still also practice it in Europe or wherever else. The fundamentals are always important. Like maybe for a graphic designer, understanding typography, understanding layout, understanding how to apply principles of design into every design project would easily be a very good solution, regardless of whether you're trying to introduce Nigerian design, Nigerian aesthetics or not. It's just fundamental that functional design needs to serve a purpose, and if you understand how to apply the tools and how to apply the principles, you eventually arrive at good design.
Let's talk a bit more about like craft and improving things. I want to know exactly how are you currently owning and improving your craft, because in this current moment or time where we have a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of designers or some designers feel as if maybe if I'm not learning this new thing yet, this new thing, they might feel left out in a way that maybe, especially maybe they are now managing teams and not very hands-on. Yeah, so how do you find that balance and how are you currently owning your craft?
I think I don't know if I was answering a question some time ago, and it was around the question around of AI and how this is important both to the work that we do as designers. But I think that eventually when anything that can be made,
Yeah.
what to be made will be the most important thing to think of. And so if you think about how during the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot of things that could be made and they could be made very fast. Those that could make things stopped being the most important people, and those that could think of what needs to be made were now those that were sort of like taking the frontiers. And that's when you'd see people that are either creative directors or able to conceptualize and come up with an idea and find people to execute it, were the ones that were quote unquote considered to be geniuses. So I think that that's going to happen again, and this time taste will be the most important factor. If I can come up with an idea and with a few prompts generate that idea and bring it to life, it means that there will be so much clutter in the world because a lot of people would not have good taste. And now when there's not enough taste and everybody is just putting out things that are below average, it means that the person that has better taste or better understanding of how to articulate ideas that are very well thought out and fully refined, those kinds of people will now take the center stage, and like their taste and their ability to decide what is good will now be the most defining factor. So I feel like, especially now that we're in this age, if you can walk back a couple of years and maybe start reading things that are in print, it would really help. Because I think I was on Pinterest a couple of days back and I was searching for maybe interior design, and maybe out of every 5 images were AI. And what this means is you're going to see something that maybe feels like interior design. You're not certain if this is an AI image or if this was actually a photograph. Yeah. And that being the case, we're getting to the point where if you cannot tell something was AI or not, it means that you're going to see everything as one. But if you're reading printed material, maybe from like 10 years ago, there's always craft that is very highly refined. And I think it was Brian Collins that was saying that every time they're starting a project at Collins, they don't look on the internet. They read magazines, they read books, they look at poetry, fashion archives, and everything that is from the past. This is in a bid to ensure you're not regurgitating the same thing that someone else got from a reference, and that person that they got the reference from also got it from another reference. It just feels like you are
just recycling.
Exactly. Like, so if you're really, really interested in elevating your craft, especially now, you'd be very focused on understanding what was considered to be high quality design 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and really studying it and trying to understand how art direction played a strong role in defining what that thing is. I think that that would help, especially now that almost every single time you swipe, there'll be something that's made with AI and it does not feel like it is well presented or well thought out, and so it feels like slop compared to what you see in like magazines and printed material.
Interesting. I know you mentioned it a lot, but I want you to be very specific now to yourself. How do you approach learning now? Or improving?
I mean, I feel like there's nothing that I would say that would feel
Like grand
different.
or
Yeah,
different.
exactly. But I watch a lot of music videos, a lot, and a ridiculous lot. I feel like music is the thing that happens in the now, and if you watch a music video from, let's say, early 2000s, you can instantly tell that this was the outfit that was trending, this was the camera
that time.
angle, yeah, that was trending. So it feels like it's a time capsule. And so I'm very voracious with music videos. I watch a lot, and for some reason I have some kind of archive in my head, and I can recall a lot of visual references. I think that that helps with organizing thoughts and being able to establish where something is from, because I feel like it's an exercise that we either do unconsciously at the studio, where you try and figure out where something is from. And I know it happens a lot on Under Consideration, that's the blog, where there's a new logo and someone says, it reminds me of this. I feel like doing that helps you to organize a mental archive, and you're able to say, this thing has been trending and I think it reminds me of this. You don't know for certain if that was what inspired that person, but by constantly doing that, it gives you an opportunity to be able to recall references very fast. And if you can recall references fast, it means that your iteration, like your design iteration process, will be faster, because if you're working on something, you don't have to open a book because it's already in your mind, and like, this reminds you of this, you do a sketch. Yeah, so your ideas are faster rendered, and the more things you can put on paper from your mind, it means that your mind has expanded to the point where your archive is good enough to quickly recall and influence whatever it is you're going to design. So I know music videos, and I try to read magazines, especially ones that are printed, and especially ones that came out from 2000 to maybe 2010, because I feel like a lot that exists in the world, you know how you can have an idea, and then when you try and search for that kind of idea on Pinterest and you click on one image, you see like 500 variations of that same idea. Yeah. I feel like with magazines it's tougher, and so you're forced to look at something for what it is, not for what it can take you to. And so if you see a photograph of, say, Beyonce in early 2000s and she's with Destiny Kids, and there's a way they've been photographed, there's a way the lighting has been done, you're forced to study it for what it is, not as a trend or adding it to a quick archive for you to be able to recreate it next tomorrow. So I feel like those kind of things help you with understanding what your taste is. And again, a lot of things were more expensive to execute at that period. I mean, when film photographs were the only ways to take a photograph, it means that you have to think very deeply, because like, this film is expensive, so I have to either art direct the scene or ensure I've practiced hard enough for me to get this shot. Yeah, so there's a lot of thought that comes in compared to now that you can bring out your phone and take multiple photographs. You don't have to be great, you just have to take a photograph. So I think that if you're able to study things like that, it helps you find some kind of understanding around how people approached art direction, design, and a whole lot more in the past. And then I feel like it helps ground you in your ability to create new design.
You really shared a lot, which I've picked a lot of things that I can also start doing even as a designer also. So what are the books that has influenced you the most?
Unfortunately, I don't read enough to have books that have influenced me the most.
Or maybe your favorite design books that you think every designer should have or should have read?
I know Designing Brand Identity. I think Adela Wheeler. Yeah, I think that that's very important for anybody that's doing brand identity. In terms of books, I, for the life of me, cannot remember anything that is absolutely important or that I remember and I hold on to very strongly.
Okay. Who are like maybe mentors or people that you think that have also inspired your work?
Johnny Ive. I deeply. So I love the way that Johnny Ive cares about design because that's very close to obsession that comes with trying to make something better is about the only way that you can really get to a level where the work that you do is incredibly important. And I personally feel like industrial design is the pinnacle of design. I might be wrong, but it's what I feel. And the reason I feel this is because industrial design has to be functional, but it has to be functional at scale. You can make something great once. You can make five, like a limited
To
edition.
make millions of it
Yeah,
that will
make
be used across
millions.
the world.
Exactly. And you would never be able to test that product with all the users that will ever use it. So whatever decisions you're making today is, if it's going to be a successful product, it means that you have thought through all the potential possibilities of how the user will use it, and you're deciding that this direction I'm going is the best way to go because I've tested this and I believe that based off my study and my practice and my understanding, this is the best way to go. So I think
Johnny Ive.
Johnny Ive. Also, I think I really like Daniel Asham. I like Brian Collins a lot. I like Leyland Meshmeyer, co-founder, I think CEO at Collins. I really, really, really like the way he thinks about branding and brand identity. I also really like Gillian Wheeler, creative director at Sweet Green. And then my all-time fave, Elizabeth Goodspeed, editor at large, I think, or editor-in-chief at It's Nice That. I really like her thoughts, especially around design and the practice and how trends are evolving and how those trends are shaping the future of design. And then finally, Samuel Ross. Samuel Ross is a multidisciplinary designer and creative, and a lot of the work that he has done has been very inspiring, from fashion to industrial design to art. And the fact that he's very articulate about the things that he does and the quality of thought that he has shows in the work that he does, in the way that it is eventually produced and executed.
Interesting. That's like a good list of people that you should also go and check out. Yeah, which you will to like learn a lot from them. So if you could go back to give younger Jordan a piece of advice, what would it be?
There'll be a lot. One of them, now that I think about it, I don't know if I give younger Jordan this advice, it would change the trajectory of his life to the point where he does not now arrive here. And so I don't know if the advice will be good for him then. But what I would say is whatever you imagine that you're going to be in the future is maybe 17.5 million times harder than you imagine it will be. And so I remember my Twitter bio used to be, I think I was 19-year-old graphic designer. That's what my Twitter bio was. And at that point I felt young and I felt like people are going to be thrilled at the fact that I'm 19 years old, I'm a designer. Yeah, but now that I think about it, like I should have worked twice as hard and I should have stayed up all night way more times than I did, so that I eventually arrive at, how old am I now? Maybe 29, and I probably would have been more. So I think should have worked really harder, even though I know I did a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of like putting a lot of effort. I think that that's eventually what got me here, and I don't think that there would have been another pathway, but there's no amount of hard work is too hard, and so I would have advised myself to still try harder.
So advice for maybe a young person also that is just starting out their own, maybe brand design agency, studio, photography studio, or whether it's branding studio, yeah, or even product design.
Understand the money very, very deeply, because I think it's something that happens with a lot of creatives where because the work that you're interested in doing, and this is for someone that's starting out your studio, I wouldn't really give this advice to someone that's deciding to be a freelance designer, because as much as it's important, it might not be the most important thing when you're working at a full-time job and like you have your salary sorted out. But if you run a studio and you don't really understand the money, you're going to be in problems that your design skills cannot solve. Because if you have to allocate budget and decide how you want to hire, fire, scale your company, take on projects, decline projects, those are not things that you require design skills to do. Like anybody that's great at business can do those things with some kind of small advice from a designer. So if you understand the money and you understand how the money is important, you would also understand that the work that you do is for companies that want to make more money, not for people that just like to look at cool things. And so if you have this kind of understanding around how finance runs the world, it helps you, it gives you some kind of ground knowledge on how important your work is, or if your work is even important in that case. So I think, yeah, if you follow the money, it will lead you to a place where you can make tangible decisions.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It's been a very, very insightful episode so far. So like we're wrapping up. This is like my final question for Jordan. So like looking forward, what's like your vision for the Belonwus studio, in terms of the role you want to play in shaping the Africa's creative scene?
I mean, personally, I really like design, and so I want to do it for a long while. But like I said about industrial design, I feel like that's the pinnacle of design, and eventually I know that I will practice industrial design at a very large scale. Majority of what we're doing right now is sort of trying to take on less projects in terms of like number, but do deeper work in each of the projects, because we're realizing that multiple small projects might not give the kind of impact that we need for us to consider the work that we do valuable. Because if you spend, say, 6 months trying to build something, you hand it over to the client, and like maybe the client doesn't use it well enough, you move on to the next project and move on to the next project. In a couple of years, you would almost have no kind of legacy or no kind of archive that was really impactful, because you either moved on too fast or the project ended and you moved on to another project. So we're taking things somewhat slow in terms of like working on limited projects, but going ham on all those projects to the point where we're making tangible impact. And tangible impact not just in having a good portfolio or doing great work from a visual standpoint, also ensuring that the work that we're doing is translating specifically into money, not into good vibes, not into recognition, like money for the clients. Because the reason that every business exists is so that they can make money. And so if we're helping them do this, it feels like we're making the most impact from doing something that we really like.
Any dream projects, frontiers, or collaborations that you're looking for too?
I mean, I feel like everything is leading to wherever it is leading to. So at this moment, maybe not really dream projects, because I feel like I'm currently working on a dream project. So
nice. We are looking forward to it.
Everything is in order.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordan. Yeah, so lastly, in wrapping up, what will be your maybe final words, or for anyone watching, maybe founder, designer?
I think the final words will be, if you have any kind of belief in what you consider to be the greatest company in the world, or two greatest companies in the world, imagine whatever those companies are. I personally believe, and I don't think I'm wrong, that design and advertising and marketing is about 60-50% the reason why those companies are where they are. And so you should trust in design the way those companies have trusted in design. That's what I'll say.
That's like a very amazing way to like wrap up this episode. I'm sure that you found this episode valuable, whether you're listening on Spotify or any of your favorite audio platforms, or watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. We'll continue to bring top and amazing people doing great exploits, just to inspire you, inform, educate you, and just give you everything you need to pursue your dreams, and also reinforce your belief that great things can be done from small places. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.